So, overview of writing a query letter is make your book sound awesome. That's what you try to do. How to write one, I have no idea. I'm terrible at it. Stalk them in the night.
Yeah, I mean, I think that research is key, and knowing who you're sending it to. I get a lot of things that where people have, like in the CC line, have copied all agents that ever existed in the history of the world and just send a blank, a blanket query to everyone within one email. That's not how you do it. But researching it and really knowing who's out there is the trick. And the internet is a blessing and a curse for that, I'd say. There's a lot of good information out there. There's a lot of bad stuff too. So I am going to talk a little bit about that also in my class. Hopefully, if the first book was good and their experience with you was good, then I think agents always want to have clients who continue with them. It's a lot easier to help somebody who's already established to continue their career and build their career than to have to try and find new people. That's a lot harder than an established author. So I would imagine that if he needs more time, that he should probably be able to get more time.
Something that Amy said that you really want to pay attention to. Your agent's job is to build your career. As an author, sometimes you're really focused on this one thing that you wrote. And so if I get an agent and my agent doesn't sell that one thing, then I'm discouraged and I'm depressed and, maybe I should get a different agent. Maybe I should stop writing or whatever. Your agent's job is to build your career and really have it be something that's going to be long-term and successful. And that's why it really does pay to take the time to do your research, figure out who you really want, work with them, listen to them. I know that Amy, because I know people who Amy has represented, and I know my agent the same way, they'll have discussions. Maybe the first one doesn't sell. And so you say, well, I've got these 3 other ideas that I'm kind of working on. And a good agent can come back to you and say, you know what, I'd focus on this. I think that's a good time. I think that fits your voice and what you're kind of trying to do. And so getting a great agent is the step you need to get in that position to where you can kind of climb the mountain. But don't worry if the first story that your agent reps doesn't sell.
Say more than one literary agent is interested in your work. How do you decide which agent to go with? I have that problem all the time.
Just be glad that more than one wants your stuff.
I actually did have that experience where I had an offer of representation from 2 agents after 9 years of rejections when I got to that point. But I just spoke to them both and went on personality. One was very much a coach personality, very blunt, and one was like a cheerleader. And I'm the type of person where I need to be told, that's insane. That's not going to work. Otherwise I will just write crazy things. And so I kind of went with the one that I felt like would control me a little bit and had the courage to say, no, Tess, you need to go in this direction, or, that type of thing. What suited my personality. His personality does not suit other people's personalities. So you just will talk to them at that point. You'd have a phone conversation with them and go with your gut.
One thing, too, you want to be really careful of when you're querying agents is don't just query any agent. Make sure that it's somebody that fits with you and with what you're looking to do and what you want to do with your book, because you don't want to just take the first person that makes you an offer that was just some person that you found and send a query to, and then you're kind of with this agent who has different ideas and different plans for your books than what you have. So make sure you only query the people who fit with you and what you're looking to do.
Oh, I'll just throw something in real quick. Just in case there's somebody like me, if I was sitting there, I would be like, what is an agent and everything? Do you guys know that? Does everybody understand that? You're all nodding, so you all know. Just in case you don't, if you're a writer, you can write in and you try to get the attention of an agent. And if they like your writing, then you sign a deal between the 2 of you, and then they take your book to the publishing companies. Does that make sense? They take it to hey, are you interested in this? And they sell what you have written. So just in case somebody needs.
Not at the stage that you're at right now. What you're talking about is basically selling on proposal. Okay, that can happen. If you're an author who's published several books, you've got a little background, you've got some history, you might come back to your agent, and your agent might say, you know what, I really like this idea. Give me the first 50 pages and a synopsis, and I'm going to go shop this right now. But when you're going out and trying to get an agent, one of the worst things that you can do now, there are times when you can go to like a pitch session and say, hey, I'm working on this thing. And they can say, okay, that's 6 or 9 months down the road. But if you send out a query letter and an agent says, I like this. This sounds good. Send this to me right now. Send me a full or send me a partial, maybe the first 50 or 100 pages. And you have to respond, oh, I don't really have this ready. Or you've got to try to rush and finish it up so you can send it out and it's not polished. You're really shooting yourself in the foot, because that first opportunity you have with this great agent, you're basically saying to them right now, I'm not really professional. So right now at the stage that you're at, don't just have it done. Have it done, have beta readers having read it, have polished it, have it be the very best work that you possibly can have it be when you send it out to that agent. Because they may come back and say, you know what, this wasn't the exact story that I wanted, but I really like your writing. I like your voice. I like what you're doing. Send me something more. Whereas if you rush it out and send it out and they go, wow, this was really not that good, that's the picture they have of you. Send out your best work, first of all. Okay, focus on what you think your very best, most polished, marketable thing is. In the conversation, when you're actually interviewing the agent, because that is a two-way thing. The agents, if I pitch Amy and Amy says, hey, I'm interested in this, we're going to call and we're going to talk on the phone, hopefully, and I'm going to ask her a whole bunch of questions. She's going to ask me questions. That's the time when you can mention that you've got other things and how those might work. But start with one. Focus on your best, I think. Would you agree, Amy?
Sorry. I think you kind of muddy the waters sometimes if you're going out with more than one thing. It's better to focus on one thing, and then once you get somebody's attention, then absolutely, like with Jen. It's a little bit touchy. Anyway. She had her eavesdropper, which was ready to go, but she had other ideas and other things that she was working on, and then I was excited to hear about those, because an agent wants somebody who's not going to write one book, but is going to write dozens of books. That's the whole career building thing that Jeff was talking about. So it is great to have more than one thing that you've done, and continue writing, even though you're done with that one and you want to work on sending it out. Don't stop writing just because you've written one novel. That's great. That's wonderful, but generally speaking, you've got to write a bunch before you necessarily get to the one that gets published. If you come to my class next hour, I will show you some really awesome examples of really, really things you should not do in query letters, which will probably give you a good idea of what you should do. I'm also going to talk about good stuff, and some of you who are in here can attest to that, right? It's a little bit hard to tell you that right now, I think, and there are, like Jeff said, there's lots of information out there on the internet about how to write a good query. For me, a lot of it is about showing some of your personality in that query letter, because I see thousands, literally, of query letters, and after a while, every story looks exactly the same when you write it out as a synopsis. It's la la la, boy meets girl, boy blah blah blah, this, that, the other. It's all the same story, it seems, and they all really run together a lot. But if you can get some of who you are in there and the details about that story, that makes a big difference for me as somebody who's only reading a synopsis and determining whether or not I'm going to actually read any of your manuscript. You want to catch my attention somehow.
So there's so many different options now for publishing. You still have to have your book edited. You still have to have a good, polished, finished book to self-publish. You can't get away with not doing that in order to self-publish if you want to actually sell any books. So, but the world is completely different now. If you don't know where to go, an agent is a great way to go, because they're going to do all the work for you. If you're like me and you're just lazy and don't want to wait and you just want to do it yourself, then you can either go straight to a small publishing house, or you can go self-publishing, because there are so many ways in the world now for you to publish besides just the traditional way.
What you put on the back of a book, Amy will talk about, is not what you put in a query letter. A full synopsis is something entirely different, and that could be a 1-page, it could be a 3-page. What you want to do is look at what the agent is asking you for. What are their submission requirements? And then do that. In general, what I describe as the hook of a query when I talk about query letters is I want enough information so the agent can understand who's the main character, what are they trying to accomplish, what stands in their way, and what are the consequences of success and failure. You know what? Give me the meat of the plot in an entertaining way that kind of shows your voice. That's what you're kind of looking for. You're not going to tell the whole story. You're not going to do it sequentially. My whole goal, if I query Amy, is to have Amy see that A, I'm professional, B, to get a kind of taste of my writing style and my voice, and C, have enough good stuff in there that she goes, yeah, I'm willing to take a look a little more. If she'll do that, your query letter has succeeded. That's the whole point of your query letter.
Can a teenager writing about adults be taken seriously?
When you write your query letter, they have no idea how old you are. Yeah. So really, it just comes down to, in your writing, is it good? You know, can an adult reading it, can they relate to it? Will it be intriguing to them? So really, you can write anything that way. Age is really not really that important. Your writing is, right? And your ability to weave a story completely is.
Self-publishing means that you're doing the whole thing yourself. So there are several ways you can have your book printed, and you can also, upload it online to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. It just means you don't have a publishing house doing it for you. You're doing it all yourself. That means you are in charge of making sure that it's edited, that you have it edited, that you either do the cover or have someone do the cover if you're not really good at that. And it's just entirely your own book then at that point. And so there's nobody who's going to market it for you but you, which is mostly the case anyway with most books. But it just means that you've done it yourself. You wrote the book, you had it edited, or, and then you did your cover or had your cover done, and then you upload everything yourself and sell it yourself.
There is, and we've all been kind of alluding to this, but there is such a world of opportunities now that you really need to do some reading and some research to kind of understand what's going on. All publishers are not created equally. I mean, if I have a book come out from Harper, there's some benefits that I get. It's Harper itself, so I know they've got a sales force marketing it. They've got the art direction that they do. It appears to me that sometimes it's a little easier to get national reviews with Harper kind of backing that story. But they may not do anything else. They may not do any other marketing at all. Then you can have a mid-tier publisher. Like I've got my Far World series with Shadow Mountain. They don't have the same reach, the same sales force that a Harper does, but they're doing things for me right now with my Far World series that Harper isn't necessarily doing for my Case File 13 series. So again, you kind of look at what they're doing. And then, again, with self-publishing, there's a whole series of benefits and trials that you've got there. It's really difficult to get on store shelves. But on the other hand, lots of sales are happening with ebooks and things like that. And so you can get reviews, or you can get a distributor. There's just a bunch of different areas right now. And what you really want to do is, before you just throw that book out there, have done your research and really studied. No, don't self-publish because you're too impatient to wait for an agent. And at the same time, don't grab the first publishing deal or the first agent that comes along just because you want to say, I'm legitimate. I understand what you're trying to accomplish.
"17 years."
I think that's a tough question to answer. Querying can take years if you keep at it. I mean, it can take very short time if you've got the right project. I know I had a situation recently with an author who sent out queries and had an agent within a couple of months, and she'll probably have her book sold really quickly because it was something that was just really hot and everybody wanted it. Unfortunately, that's not often the usual experience for authors. I don't know, you guys might be able to answer that better than I can, but from the time that are you asking more about like when you sell a book and how long it takes to get it actually on the shelf? So from the time that you sell a book until it is hard copy in your hand, available at Barnes & Noble, whatever, depends, but it usually takes at least a year and a half.
It feels like forever.
Yeah. I'm also with Shadow Mountain, along with Jeff. They do the Fable Havens, Janitor, stuff like that. And they pulled mine from when they bought mine to when it was on the shelf was a year. And that was really fast, right? And they were under the gun, really trying to get it done. So usually once a publisher says, hey, I want to publish it, it is usually a year and a half-ish. So it's a long wait. But usually also, say it's a series, your second one's due by the time the first one comes out. So you're busy writing. Not that they're all going to be series, but you always try to have something you're working on. So you finish something, maybe you do some queries, send it out there, and you set that aside as you wait, and you move on to your next project, and you write something else awesome, right? You just keep going.
And do not make your next project book 2 of the one you just sent out. Do something entirely different. There's nothing more frustrating than, I've written 3 books in the series, but I haven't been able to sell the first one, so what do I do? So get that one out there, start something new and different, and focus on that, and let that take your mind off it while you're querying.
He asked, with ebooks and internet and everything, is a physical book necessary anymore? The answer is, I wasn't going to answer it. I'm just holding the microphone and repeating his question. I would, depends on your audience, is a big one. For example, I write middle grade fiction, which is, my main characters are 12, and you're not going to have it's geared towards kids 8 to 12, and my audience, they don't all have Kindles, right? Parents don't buy Kindles for everybody, so for my audience, paper is very important. That's what we're going to do most of. Right, is the hardbound book. There will still be some internet sales. If it's more something driven towards older people that are going to have their iPads and Kindles and stuff, it can be successful. But most people do a blend of both. And that's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out over the next few years.
For me, about 99% of my sales are ebooks. I sell very, very few paper books, but my books are geared towards teens and young adults, and so they all have a phone, and so they read it on their phones more than even on their Kindles and Nooks, and so I think, like you said, it just depends on the age group. And I also wanted to add, no, I don't, to the self-publishing. Will you hold it? I'll let Tess hold it. Never pay to have your book published. So I forgot to tell you that because a lot of people think self-publishing means you have to pay to have your book published. Never pay to have your book published, whether you go self or through a publisher or through an agent or wherever. You can pay for editing if you go self-publishing. You can pay for a cover if you go self-publishing, but do not pay to have your book published.
Ooh, I'm going to let Amy answer that, but let me say first, it's the same thing. You don't pay. You're the professional. So that's really important because you'll have agents approach you, and I had that early on when I was younger. They would say, well, I would get these emails. I'll review your book or whatever if you pay me $20, $100, whatever it was. And, you think that's the way it is because that's what's being brought to you and you don't know any different. But it's really important to know that you shouldn't have to pay anything. So my agent takes 15% of whatever he earns for me. So he sells the book, he gets 15% of that. On royalties, he gets 15% of that. Is it 15%? Okay. So he gets a cut of whatever he sells. I've never had to pay anyone anything. They pay me. That's the cool part.
Yeah, Tess is exactly right. That is cardinal rule. Never, never, never pay somebody to read your stuff unless you are hiring an editor, not an agent. A reputable agent does not charge you to represent you to a publisher. That's absolutely, somebody who's doing that is not somebody you want to have as your agent. Okay?
And the easiest way to remember that is money flows to. Yeah. The easiest way to remember is money flows to the author. It always goes in that direction. As soon as it starts going the other way, there's a problem.
Question in the back. Let's go with blue. Ooh, good question. Her question was, if you've already published like a fantasy novel, is it hard to publish a different genre novel after you've already established your genre? Are you marked?
Yeah, Tess just whispered, you just change your name. And she's right. A lot of people do that, actually. They'll publish, especially if it's something that's really specific and they're really known for that genre, then, they would maybe use a different name to publish under for something else. That's one way to go about it if you don't want to confuse your audience. There is something to be said for the fact that you already have an audience if you're already published and you want that name to continue on, and your publisher wants to be able to say, oh, look, we're now publishing XYZ author who is great and she already brings this audience to this. So I think it depends on the circumstance, but I don't think it's a problem so much. You may run into problem with agents, especially because agents tend to represent certain things, and like I represent a lot of YA and middle grade fiction, but if you're writing a biography of Benjamin Franklin, then I'm not your gal. So I couldn't necessarily represent something that was that different successfully just because my contacts aren't the editors that do that. And so you want an agent who has the contacts that you need for that. So you might have to find a different agent for that particular project if that's what you're trying to do. Sure. She asked for a picture book. If you've written a picture book, the words for a picture book, do you need to go find an agent or do you need to find an illustrator? What you need to do is find an agent, and the publisher really is responsible for the illustrations. You will have almost no say in that, actually, which is not always a good thing. But publishers, a lot of them actually have a whole bank of illustrators that they're just want to use. That's often where a picture book starts, is that they actually have illustrators that they're waiting and anxious to use, and they're just trying to find a manuscript that goes with it. So you need to start trying to find a publisher. A lot of picture book people don't necessarily have agents. There's not a lot of money in picture books is the thing, and so agents tend to not be as involved because the cut is so small when we're talking about pretty small deals for the writing end of it. The most successful picture books tend to be people who are author illustrators who do both. So you may not need an agent. There are a lot of ways to go about selling something for picture books without an agent.
All right, you guys, let's give them a round of applause. That's so awesome. Thank you so much. You have one more breakout. I know Cynthia's going to be teaching about marketing. Amy's going to do another agenting class. I'm teaching about first chapters. Can I plug my own? I'd plug you guys, but you're done. You're off the hook. So have a good last class, and then we'll see you in the closing, okay?